All right, here we go, man. It's the podcast, the official Teach Like a Rockstar podcast. Let's get this thing going. So it's been a while. You know what? We've recently have been on the road. I've been on the road in Nashville, Atlanta, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Arkansas, and we are getting ready for some trips this summer. We're gonna be all over. Listen, we have shows coming up this summer. You know, this is when we get busy. We do that whole back to school thing. And this is when, I'll go out. I'll leave about the middle of July. And then I'll get back, somewhere around September 1st. And we're on the road. We do 3, 4, 5 shows a week. And if you would like to do a little Teach Like a Rockstar at your school, at your district convocation, give us a call. Let's set it up. What you do is you go to teachlikearockstar.com. You click on Rock Your Schoolhouse, and right there's all the information. You fill out the form, you send it in, and we'll give you all the details. Man, we'll be in Kentucky coming up in June, and then July things get crazy. Corpus Christi, El Paso. We're in Texas, then off to Tennessee, Bells, Tennessee, and then Prestonburg, Kentucky. We're in Banks County, out there in Homer, Georgia, and then we'll be over in Oklahoma, back to Texas. It's crisscrossing all over the place. We would love to come see you, so give us a call, and we'll set it up for the back-to-school Teach Like a Rockstar in your school. All right, so today on the podcast, we have Charles Aguillon. Now, listen, I've known Charles for a long time. Everybody calls him Charles. I call him Chuck. Just, I don't know, I kind of think it bothers him, so, that's what I do. And also, what Charles Aguillon doesn't know, he thinks it's a podcast interview, and it is. But more than that, it is, this is going to be an intervention. I am going to blindside him because Charles has an addiction problem, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And I'm going to make him admit it in front of thousands of teachers across the nation. And he's going to, because that's the first step. He's got to admit that he has a problem, and it's going to be embarrassing for him. It might humiliate his family, but you know what, man? Tough love, baby. This is what we're doing. So let's give Charles a call. He is in Georgetown ISD, Georgetown, Texas. Charles and I taught years ago together and have kept in contact ever since. And let's see if I can get him on the Skype here. Let's see what we can do. All right, Charles, where are you, brother? Let's see if we get this thing happening here. Oh, yes. There he is. Talk to me, Charles.
I don't have a fancy microphone like you.
And man, I tell you, man, the best thing about check out the cans, brother. Look at my cans. These are pro. And here's the thing, man. It's all fake. This is all it's just props. All props. And Charles, how are you, man?
I'm doing good.
So here's the thing, I was thinking about is when we were teaching together back in it was right after fire, but before the wheel was invented. It was
1995, I think it was.
Yeah, but we've known each other since 88.
88, yeah.
Yeah, that's when I met you, and 88, and then we taught together in the 90s. Well, I wouldn't say we taught together. You were teaching. I'm not sure what I was doing. I was just kind of. Just kind of hanging out, collecting a paycheck. But you were teaching up a storm, brother. You're teaching for both of us. And now here's what I was thinking about when I was calling you. I remember that we would talk and on the phone at night, and every time the phone would ring and Georgia would answer, she'd yell out, "Your boyfriend's on the phone."
Yep. Yeah.
So look at you, man. You're still doing it. Georgetown ISD. How's your life over there, brother?
It's good.
Yeah.
Fixing to change, fixing to change big time, but
I know, man. This is a huge step. Hey, by the way, man, you got everything you need. You have your phone turned off.
Yeah.
You have to make a potty.
I already did.
Oh, that's my boy. And you have your coffee. You don't drink coffee, do you?
I do have coffee. That's in the morning. It's got my big 44-ounce Diet Dr. Pepper.
No, I don't think you drink. I thought you were a non-coffee drinker.
I learned over the years to appreciate coffee.
Yes, it's delicious. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's very delicious.
All right. All right, so Charles, now, listen, man, we have set this thing up under the guise of a podcast interview with you. But the truth is, that's not at all what it is. This, my friend, is an intervention. because you have an addiction problem. Now I'm gonna get it out. We're gonna get it out in front of everybody. You have a little issue that I'm gonna say the sentence for you because the first step is for you to admit that you have a problem, and then I'm gonna say the whole sentence, and you're gonna fill in the blank. Charles Aguillon, you, sir, are addicted to all things.
Disney.
Yes, there it is. There it is. Now it's out. And right above your noggin. What is the deal with you and Disney, man?
The house.
There it is. So now with this whole Disney thing, did you start going when you were a kid or?
No, my parents never took us because we were like Astroworld was like the place to be.
Right.
So I went on a high school band trip for the first time.
Mm-hmm. With who? With
Victoria High School when I was in high school.
Did you go to Victoria or Stroman or which?
I went to Victoria. Yeah.
Victoria. I don't want to insult you by saying you went to Stroman. All right, so you went to Victoria, and so you went. So when you went on a high school band trip, you knew, oh my gosh, this is the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I recently went there, with the wife.
Yeah.
And we hired a Disney consultant, my friend, because if you try to book a Disney trip on your own, you're crazy. You got to work with somebody who knows.
Right.
And this chick saved us a ton of money, man. She told us where to stay. Well, she gave us options where to stay, and then where to eat, and where the deals were, and the show tickets, and all that stuff. She was great. And Jones, my boy, he loved it. Lily loved it. Daddy loved it. Yeah. Mama, not so much.
Oh.
She was one of those.
Too commercial?
Listen, I hear birds chirping. I don't see birds. Where?
There.
Right. I hear chainsaws cutting down the tropical rainforest, but there's no chainsaws anywhere. That was her. So but I loved it, man, because when I was in college, man, at Tech, after I transferred from Southwest Texas State, I transferred to Tech, and my roommate, my room dog up there, he was one of those Disney intern people where he was a landscape architect.
Yeah.
Major, and so I knew about the whole thing. I knew about backstage is what they call that little secret area, and I knew about going on stage. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, right. You're all Mickey.
Yep.
That's how you think about it when you step through the gates, man. You're on stage, and so I kind of knew about the whole thing, getting into it, and I loved it, dude. It was great. And so you loved it from high school, and then you started going. And how often? Well, okay, let me just get to the addiction issue. How many times have you been?
We don't count anymore. The most we've been in a year is the most I've been in a year is 10.
You've been 10 times in a year.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep. And that includes you, your kids, your family, your trips that you bring people on. We'll talk about a little bit later. All that. Yep. So you've been 10 times in a year.
Yeah.
And you still love it.
Still love it. We're going back June 28th until July 5th. Yep. So that's our big family vacation.
And so I have a feeling like people there now. Like people see you coming. Yeah,
people. We know a lot of locals, and a lot of our friends have moved down there because of Disney.
Right.
And so we've kept track of them, and we actually travel in packs. Like, we'll meet people over there from different places, and it's pretty cool.
Travel in packs.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I appreciate it. I didn't know if it was called a gaggle or a den, but it's a pack. It's a pack of Disney people.
Yeah.
All right, if you say so. All right, so let's get to this thing, man. So you are in Georgetown ISD, and currently, tell us your position.
Currently, I'm the associate principal at Georgetown Eastview High School.
All right, now that place did not even exist when I was teaching in Georgetown.
Right. It's brand new. This is our second full year of being a high school.
All right, and so second full year of being a high school, that means it opened previous.
Yeah, it used to be the Georgetown 9th grade campus.
Okay. And so you moved in there now how many years have you been in that position?
5 years. This is my 5th year.
And we're going to talk about your big change coming up, but let's back it up. So you and I met at Southwest Texas State, and you were there for a number of years. You were eventually paroled, and you were your first job. Where were you teaching? My
first job was in San Marcos High School and Owen Goodnight Junior High School.
Right. And Goodnight and San Marcos CISD.
CISD, right.
And dude, when did you know that you wanted to be a teacher?
I knew I wanted to be a teacher back when I was in elementary school. I sang in a community children's choir, mm-hmm. and really admired my choir director, and her husband ended up being my junior high band director. So I kind of lived at their house a lot, and um, they really inspired me and got me going into music a lot.
Yeah. And growing up, were your parents supportive of all your music stuff, your choir and your band and all that stuff you had going on?
They were always there, and financed my trips to New York and New Orleans, all sorts of places we went and sang around the world,
Right.
places they'd never been, but they made sure I got there.
Parenting's an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so had your parent now, and so at high school, it was no question, man. It was just after high school, it was just a matter of what college you were going to go to, but you already knew you were going to major in music and do the
Yeah.
music ed thing, be a band director. All that was kind of in your DNA already.
Yep.
And so, man, can you think back when you were in junior high, high school, that age? Was there a band director that really had impacted your life?
Well, I think my high school band director, Rusty Logan, he was the guy who kind of gave me kind of the model of the band director I wanted to be. He had real high expectations, but he really treated us with respect. He wasn't a yeller. He didn't get in our face to get us what we needed to get done. And in fact, he's retiring this year after 33 years of teaching. This is his year to retire, so we're going to get together. He doesn't teach in Texas anymore. He's in Auburn, Alabama, but he's coming to Texas. We're going to do a big shindig for him in July.
Nice.
So,
And so it's been, what did you say, 30 something years?
33, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, man. Can you imagine? And so, that's interesting because, I wonder, like, if you had a different model growing up, like if you thought that you had to do that whole in your face screaming and yelling, like maybe you would have tried that because that's like not at all your personality, but
Right.
maybe if that's all you saw, you would have tried it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think we all can get into that habit of taking the personality of the boss, because we think that's what you do.
Yeah. You don't know any different.
And so when I finally had opportunities to kind of get out on my own, then it kind of made me remember how I really wanted to run programs and how I really wanted to treat and work with kids. So
And when you're a music major there at Southwest, was that ever discussed, like the personality, the band director, and the leader, and your style of teaching? Because at Southwest, I never got to those classes. I left after a couple years and went to Tech. But at Tech, we never talked about that. It was talked about what you're going to teach and how you're going to teach it, theoretically. But we never really talked about that relationship component with the kid and how to get the kid to want to do what you want them to do.
yeah, no, I don't think you get it at all in college. I think it's either trial by fire or you have a good mentor to model for you. And that's one of the things that I do, as a principal. I try to model that for the staff so that, the way I treat them is the way I expect them to treat the kids.
Yeah. And man, that's awesome. Because you got this whole cool, laid back. There's really no emergency happening. Nothing's really everything's going to work out fine in the end. Vibe about you, and I know that teachers need that because I know, like when I'm in the trenches and I get all emotional and crazy, just having that calming, soothing personality nearby, man, is just so reassuring, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough, but I think I have this philosophy even at home. It's like if there's nobody getting hurt, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I used to have this a principal, and her like that whole first week of school, she'd ever tell everybody, just relax. It's the first week. Our whole goal is to get them off the bus. We feed them. There's no injuries. We put them back on the bus, and that's it. Yep. Everything. If you happen to teach something along the way, that's great. But the first week, it's all we're doing. And it's true, because in those kinds of schools, and when you have thousands of kids, it's like running a little city.
Yeah.
Inside of 6 hours, and you send them back out. All right, so man, you're doing a thing in San Marcos, and then you started teaching there in what year?
93.
93, and then I showed up in 95.
Yeah.
And I was teaching in Pettis and took some time off, went to Georgetown, and came back and where I was in Georgetown, where you're teaching now, and we're going to get to something there. And so in San Marcos, I'll tell you what was that school we taught at? It was a brand new school.
The Miller School.
Yeah. What was her name? The principal there?
Oh, Ana Lopez.
Lopez. Oh, yes. I couldn't remember her first name. Miss Lopez. She was, and I'll tell you what, man, I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if you were there with me, but were you there on that first day when she took everybody on the bus?
No, I didn't have to go on that. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it changed my life. And I was
Yeah.
going to say, so here's how she communicated to us because it's a brand new school. Remember that?
Right.
Dory Miller is a brand new school, and it was beautiful.
Mhm.
Because I mean, it's brand new, so I mean, everything still has like Saran wrap on it,
Right.
and so you think, obviously with this beautiful school, we're getting some beautiful kids wearing some cute little outfits and all that, and so before the kids ever came, I went, and the first day. I guess you're probably at the high school working. I went on the bus. She put every teacher on the bus. Within 5 minutes of the meeting, she had the bus full of teachers, and she took us around San Marcos to show us where our kids lived. And she would stop the bus, and we all got out of the bus, and she said, "Okay, you see that orange extension cord coming from that house going across the street, and you see how they cover it right here so it doesn't get ruined when the cars, because all these people over here are sharing the electricity with this house, and they're going to pay." And and showed us how they do plumbing and where these kids and the depth of the poverty that they live in.
Yep.
And man, it changed. And she said, "So remember, when you're yelling at your kids about not doing homework, look right there. That's their home." And dude, it changed everything for me.
Yep.
I never really understood it until you see it. She was great, dude.
Yeah. She's one of my best mentor models, I guess. She was a classy lady. Classy lady.
Dude, here it is, man. She had that vibe about her, like she was like not just she was classy, but she was like she was just so respectful of everyone. I mean, whether it was you, a kid, the custodian, everybody, she treated them like they were a king,
Yep.
and she was so respectable as well as respectful, and like you just wanted to, she had that person where you just wanted to do good. You know what I mean? You don't want to disappoint her.
Right. Right.
Awesome. All right, so we're teaching in San Marcos, and I'm leaving out a ton of stories because man, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But at some point, you decide to go to Georgetown.
Yep.
You were offered the job there. There's somebody by the name of Hal Bowman that introduced you to Rodney Klett,
Yep.
and you went and interviewed, and you came, and at some point you tell everybody you're leaving for Georgetown, which at the time was an insanely competitive band program. Like this is not teaching, brother. This is a lifestyle.
Right.
And I want to ask you if you remember this quote because you came back and you told the high school band director where you're going to go, and he told you if you go to Georgetown, Texas, and teach there, you are going to. Do you remember what he said?
Kill yourself.
Yeah, he said you're gonna die. You're gonna kill yourself. But you went anyway.
I have a follow-up story that I have to, when we get later on, I have to tell you
All
why
right.
I knew that my new experience was going to work.
Right.
It was meant to be, but I'll bring that up later.
Okay.
It's
So
very similar.
you taught in San Marcos, and dude, I'll tell you what. You built some great relationships there, especially with the kids.
Yep.
And you still talk to him. You're still
Oh,
friends
yeah.
with him. And
One of my drum majors there. I think he was there the year before you got there.
who was it?
Daniel Guerrero. He's the mayor of San Marcos.
All because of you.
All because of me, because he was my drum major for
That's
marching.
right. You told him that whole door, floor, wall, windows, and look at him now, running
Yeah.
the city.
Mayor of San Marcos.
And how's San Marcos doing, man? They got their act together over there in that district.
Yeah, they've done really well. I mean,
Things got crazy at the end with me and you there. Well, I'm not saying it was because of us,
lots
but
of change. Yeah.
but that whole administration got at the central office, man.
Yeah.
It hit the wall, man.
Yeah, and the campus, high school campus, and
Ugh.
it just all kind of changed at the same time.
Uh huh. I remember we were there at the high school doing the pep rally thing, and the drill team came out to do the dancing, and I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my lord, is this even legal? I'm not sure. It was crazy, man. And then because I was used to Georgetown, man, which is like a whole different conservative thing.
Yeah.
And all right, so San Marcos was a great place for you to start learning the craft.
Yeah.
What would you say is some of your best lessons from teaching in San Marcos?
Well, I think you already brought up one of them is that, you've got to be real conscious of your clientele, I think people, even where I'm at now, people think a certain way and a certain Georgetown's very affluent because it's kind of a suburb.
Right.
And they would be surprised, at what we have here too. So you've got to be real conscious of that. And so like with the band in San Marcos, if you remember when I got there, there were 96 kids in the high school band. By the time we left, there were probably 300.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with the fact that we had to provide everything for every kid, like 100% reads, mouthpieces, all this stuff. If you wanted them to be involved, you had to provide everything for them.
Yep.
That's always stuck with me, even now today. Is like I talk with teachers, like you have to be prepared. Like you said, those kids aren't going to do their homework, number one, and number two, they're not going to be able to walk out and buy a $50 project. You know, my son did a project here the other day that cost $75 for him to make, and I can't imagine some of the people in my school trying to attempt close to that.
Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up because here's the thing. I travel on the nation and I've been in hundreds and hundreds of schools. And one thing I love to do is look at pictures. I like to look at the trophy cases. I like to see, and I'm telling you, dude, let me tell you something. If I see the panoramic picture of the senior class and I see the panoramic picture of the band, it usually doesn't look anything alike. You know what I mean? It's not a representation. And it's because, not everybody can afford send their kid to band camp or pay for private lessons so they can sit in the symphonic band. You know what I mean? And the fact in San Marcos, which is what I did in Pettis, and I didn't know anybody, it was just what you do, is you teach them, you give them what they need, you figure out a way to buy it, and you give it to them, and you teach them, all of them, everybody. And so that's a huge lesson, because what those kids are learning in band, especially with people like you at the helm, is exactly what they need to be successful in life.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that's one of the strengths of getting kids involved in programs. But again, you got to remove those barriers. And a lot of it's financial, and we spend a lot of time trying to remove those barriers at our school so that we do late school and we do all kind of things just because we know kids won't do their work at home or they don't have the support at home or they don't have computers at home. So we try to do all those things in the school day or we extend the school day to like 5:30 so that they have a place to be,
And so what made you decide to leave San Marcos? I mean, that's always a big question. I mean, in the band director world, it's kind of like a domino thing. One person dies or whatever, and then everybody starts moving, you know what I mean? And but what compelled you, because you had a lot going on in San Marcos. You were obviously in line. You're moving up the food chain. You were going to be the high school band director in a matter of years, and but you decided to move on. What was the deal?
I think just the reputation of the band program. Like you said, it's the very competitive program, and I kind of wanted to go learn. San Marcos, we got it to that point of, there hadn't been a sweepstakes in that town for 33 years when we got there, and so we changed that. But I felt like I needed to see the other side, like what's a band who's already made 33 years of sweepstakes. What does that look like, and how did they get there? So it was more kind of being on a team that had a lot of success to kind of see how they did things.
Yeah, my experience with teaching in Georgetown, I was there before you. My experience was. Dude, I thought I was a good teacher. I really thought my band sounded good, and we made first divisions, and I had it going, and I thought I knew what it was supposed to sound like until the first opening tuning note of Rodney Klett's.
Yeah.
And then it just hit me it was like this wave of reality came over. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am horrible. my kids could not play, obviously, because that sound right there I had never heard. I'd heard it not from a high school group.
Yeah.
And it was shocking for me to hear. And Rodney had been there for what? I don't know, about 78 years. What?
When I got there, he'd been there for 30 years already.
30 years. So he'd been around a while. And everybody in town, all the cops had been in his band. Everybody's been in his band at some time. And that dude could get, it was just like the signature sound out of kids, Right. And then also Gary Faust was teaching there, and then I would go see him work his junior high kids, and I didn't even know it was possible for kids to play that kind of literature in the 7th grade.
Yeah,
it was crazy, the standards and the expectations. I thought here's what I always say. You can't do better until you know better.
Right. And
seeing that program, like, I knew better at that point. Did you have that same feeling like when you walked in?
Yeah, there was definitely what I'd say to people all the time is the things that I didn't learn in college, I learned there. I learned by watching rehearsal there, and all the things that they don't teach you, like just concepts of sound. Like, how do you teach that? You can't teach that to somebody. They have to like see it happen. You have to see it happen. You have to see it modeled. And so those are all the things that I gleaned over the years, from working with Rodney and all the other staff there as well.
Yeah. And that was a demanding program too. I mean, it took it all out of you.
Yeah, I mean, it was demanding, and demanding of time and demanding of just it's real demanding on the kids too.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a system in place that had been in place for so long, and it had been successful. Certainly, I think we all learned a lot for sure.
Yeah, and I tell you what, man. And if I had to, and I would never, criticize people in terms of who they are, but the one critique, and probably my only and biggest critique of the system that was in place, was if you would count the number of freshmen that were in band and then look at the number of seniors.
Yeah, that definitely was one of the things I had to work on. That we made when I eventually took over, the program. That was the first thing we worked on. Was like we had a whole program with parents about this is what it's like. This is what we want as far as designing band for the kind of kids we have today.
Yeah.
And how do we address their needs so that they can stay in the program for 4 years.
Sure.
So there was a lot of things we had to change, but all for because kids are different now and kids have different interests, and one of the proudest things I can say is one of my last groups is the kids who are out of that band who are now teaching. I mean, I have lots of band directors who are in that group, and I had some doctors and lawyers because they were able to do band and stay for 4 years and stay in the program that they wanted to.
Yeah.
Whether it was health, science, or different things like that.
Yeah, we get caught up that in these competitive programs where whether it's playing football in Katy or band and wherever, it's like that's your major, that's what you do, and there's no other interest. You have to focus and dedicate fully. Where I think you can still have a giant awesome program. I remember like Tom, what's his name? Shine, right? Not Tom.
Yeah.
What's his name? Up in Duncanville. He had a great program. I mean, he had a whole carnival in the field, man, hundreds of kids.
Yeah.
And they played well and they were competitive, but you know what? He had just as many seniors as he did freshmen.
Right.
And so you went into Georgetown, and how long were you the assistant band director before you became the head band director?
Let's see. I got there in '96, and I became the head band director in 2002, 2003, somewhere around there.
And did you did you think it was going to take you? I think it's funny that you said 2002, 2003 because it's really kind of a gray area when who stopped and who started. Right?
But it was a gray area. It happened very quickly.
And so, did you think it was going to be that long?
No, I thought it might have been like, well, number one, let me back up. When I was hired to go to Georgetown, I was hired as the assistant band director at Benold Middle School, which was a brand new middle school.
Uh-huh.
I kind of walked into the high school thing by accident because Rodney got hurt and he had some kind of vertebrae issue, and I had to start running marching band rehearsals because he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of just happened, by accident. It wasn't really planned. I mean, I went there to kind of learn, and I wanted to go be a middle school band director to kind of learn the whole process of it. So, but that didn't last very long. So yeah, I was the assistant, for that long, but I think it was at a good time. I think it was a good time.
Yeah. And so learning from Rodney, because here's a guy that taught, how many years do you think he taught total?
38.
38 total. And here's a guy that, just taught tens of thousands of kids. And he taught, so, back in the day when he first started, he had to whittle his own woodwind instruments for the kids. He whittled them from a tree trunk. And so, and he was making reeds. He would make his own reeds with a razor blade and so he would, so anyway, so what would you think were some of the biggest lessons you learned from him?
Well, I think just there were so many things that were absolutes, like this is the French horn you buy. This is the clarinet you buy. Mm-hmm. And it was like, because it was tried and true. I can't argue with anybody who's had it for 38 years because they know they've tried everything, they've done this. So I totally carried that with me forward because, as we added things or as we bought things, it was like, there's no doubt in my mind, this is what you buy. I already had an answer for the question. What do you need? This is what you buy. This is the kind of sousaphone you buy. And if I went to a new school today, I would say the same things. Yeah. Because the experience I had was successful, it was successful, and it was, the stuff lasted, time because he just knew how to buy real good stuff. But I also took away just he had certain beliefs that I try to pass on to people about how kids should sound in instruments. How important that was, how important fundamentals were. And I think sometimes we kind of we look over that because we're trying to get so much stuff done. And I always try to tell band directors, especially like, hey, you still have to have certain things that you do religiously every day. The way you start rehearsal, kids have to have some routine in that part in order to really develop. It's no different than you watch a football team. They've got some things they do every day religiously. So I think those are probably the biggest things I took away from him.
Man, that's huge, and when I work with individual teachers, not so much in my group like the Teaching a Rockstar thing, but I do talk about Rodney because what he would do with his classroom, when I called it in his band hall, but it's classroom, and
Yep.
you can take away so much in terms of how he, number one, set up the room was perfect every time. Like he had his chair. I don't know if did this, but he would like color code his sections with different color. I need another yellow chair, and
right.
you have to go find a yellow chair for the flutes or whatever. And so, but the consistency of how he would start, it was the same thing every day. I'm assuming for 4 decades, and how when he stepped up and it was time to begin, everything shut down. And I think that's a great lesson to take into any classroom.
Well, I think that's what with our staff, and that's one of the things that with kids, especially like we talked about with kids that are like kids of poverty, that they need that routine, and that they've got the teacher is gonna help them by structuring things like even how do they take notes, or how do they how do they come into the room, or what's the first thing they do. So we've really tried to instill that in our staff at the high school level. Like they need to be aware of that. Even kids who are older still have to have the routine. But it's a funny story, like you talked about those colored chairs, because Rodney used to tell the story that one day the janitors came and mixed up they cleaned his room and they mixed up the chairs. They didn't know how to put them back in order. And when the kids came in the next day, they sat down in their colored chair no matter where it was in the room.
Right.
They had that routine, so they just figured something new was happening. But they were not going to sit. The clarinets were not going to sit in anything but a yellow chair.
Right.
So,
And here's what I loved about Rodney is when I would do and I was really teaching there, and I would do some things with my kids, and he would be impressed with it, and then he would come over and he would say, how'd you fix it? What did you tell him? What were the words? What words did you use? And I would
Yep.
tell him, and he would write it down.
Yep.
And he's like taking notes from me, man. I'm 24 or whatever.
Yep.
And here he is. He's like writing it on his yellow legal pad on what I said to fix that. Like he's going to use it someday. So I thought that was interesting. He was always learning, I could see, and he was always going to hear other people's organizations and classes and play and hear and see what he could learn. But here's the thing I also learned from Rodney is a powerful thing that I used outside of the band hall in my biology classes and my English classes. Is I remember him, a kid would mess something up and he would stop rehearsal and he would look at him, he would say, fix that.
Yeah.
And you know what? The kid would figure it out, he'd fix it.
Yeah.
And I thought, how powerful is that? Why not just say, I mean, the kid knew, and he knew what to do to fix it. He would just say, fix that. And the kid would fix it. That's a powerful thing for a kid to come up on it with his own thought of how, okay, well, this isn't right. How can I do it better or correctly? And they'll originate that and create that thought and fix it.
Yeah.
Dude, guy's awesome, man. All right, so you became the head band director, and how long were you a head band director there?
Let's see, until 2007. So it was about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and so until 2007, and at some point you start getting the administration bug.
Yeah, in 2004, when I actually took over full time, the music coordinator was what his job was, and so when I took over, and when he retired, they made me the first director of fine arts. So I did the teaching and fine arts job for 3 years, and then the last 2 years I just did director of fine arts job. So I kind of transitioned out of band directing and into full-time administration by the last 2 years.
So you just kind of weaned yourself off. It wasn't cold turkey.
No, I got a chance to wean myself off really. I mean, actually, I don't think anybody else gets this really opportunity to like start out doing everything. The next year decide, well, I'm going to start not doing the marching band as much. And then by the third year, I'm like, I'm not doing the marching band anymore. And then, I'm just doing contraband and organizing the program. And then finally the last year is like, I'm not doing, I'm kind of just weaning myself off the job. So
hmm And then now here's the crazy thing. How do you go from this sweet cush job of director of fine arts to working like administration at the school building level?
well, a couple things. I mean, I had a superintendent. Actually, he's back now. He retired and he came back.
Who is it?
Named Joe Dan Lee. He
Yeah.
was our superintendent, and he kind of inspired me to kind of pursue the superintendent, that kind of a job. So, but the missing piece that I was being told over and over again was you don't have any campus experience. You don't have any campus experience. You've never been even an AP or anything. So I went back and got my administration degree and kind of started doing that. And then when we were opening up what it was going to be Eastview High School, I thought that was a really good opportunity to go see a campus being built from the ground up
hmm
and just start a brand new high school. And so that's what we've been doing, and it's been a great experience.
And so, are you part of the original staff that opened up that school?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And when you open up a school, did you guys have leadership team meetings talking about like vision and the mission of this school and what we want the feel of this place to be and what kind of school we want it to be?
Yes, we had that opportunity. It was a kind of unique thing because we were moving into a new building with the faculty that had already been together for 10 years. So we'd already had a ninth grade campus elsewhere, moving them to a new campus. So we inherited the principal and I both came into a situation where the previous principal had just retired and his staff had gone elsewhere. So we all came in brand new with the staff that had been together for 10 years. So we had to start from the bottom as far as kind of laying out some vision and expectations and really kind of shaped it into what it is today, where it's kind of more everything is kind of self-driving and the leaders are kind of doing the day-to-day things in their departments. So it's a really good atmosphere on campus because the culture is very collaborative and the kids see that too.
I want you to talk a little bit because I'm thinking back. I think you and I had this conversation about 8 years ago, and as you know, my memory is pretty keen, Charles. And you talked about the culture of what you inherited being more administrative focused and teacher focused rather than kid focused. And one of the goals that you guys had coming in, transitioning to a new building, inheriting a lot of staff that were used to a different style of leadership, was making this kid centered focus in the school. Tell me more about that. What was your idea behind that?
For a long time, it was, like you said, it was really everything was kind of teacher driven. So, for example, the doors shut at 3:45 so that teachers could get their work done. Conferences weren't scheduled when parents could make it. It was scheduled at the convenience of the teacher.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of perception that the school wasn't very welcoming. So right away, we kind of just started with small things, like we began saying, we're going to start offering tutoring before and after school, but we're going to let departments decide how you handle that, like scheduling that. It doesn't matter how you schedule it or who stays early or who comes late. We're going to give you that autonomy to do that, but that's the non-negotiable part. And then we started really talking about giving them time to plan as teams and dropping kind of setting the foundation that we have now where not just planning things together, but collaboratively working, not just somebody saying, well, I'll do this test or I'll be in charge of this, but everybody contributing to it and having those professional conversations in these meetings. So our promise to them was you're going to have this time to meet, but we'd like it to look this way. So we kind of began what most schools would call professional learning communities. We don't really call them that. We just call them collaborative teams, and that's just the way we do business. And it took a few years, and every department was at a different level of acceptance from the beginning. But what turned the tide was that we started seeing those departments who started having some success on things like state assessments or whatever. They started being the models for the others. So that everybody started seeing, okay, well, these guys are working together and they're working smarter, not harder. And they're kind of like when I always give the example of band directors is that, I was a brass player, you were a percussionist. I wasn't going to not use your experience as a percussionist because I was too proud. I was going to come to you and say, Hal, I need you to work with these percussionists because that's not my forte. And so we got all the teachers to figure out that if they did that in their departments and what I was good at in geometry and you're not, that we could swap classes or we could swap ideas, that it was going to make us better. And that's kind of where we're at today.
Yeah. And I think, you know what, dude, I tell you what, this is the craziest thing. One of the things about this profession that still boggles my mind is the lack of sharing and the lack of going to visit other classrooms and this fear of having somebody sit in on your class or stand at the door or whatever. Because, you know, like in other professions, let's say it's in sales, where like, you know, if I'm a salesman, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna find the best guy in the region. I'm gonna get in his car and follow him around all the time and see what he does so I can be the best salesman too. You know what I mean? But with teaching, man, it's like this thing where, you know, I guess because of what the bottom line, when we talk about people's lives, it's such an important thing that we have at stake. Is like people are almost afraid to admit that they're maybe not even struggling, just not reaching the kids that they're trying to reach. And what they do is they close the door, they lock it, they cut out the orange construction paper so that fit over the window so no one can see in what's going on. You know what I mean? Instead of asking for help.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was the hardest thing in every time I've had to come in a new situation, whether it was a fine arts director or this campus, was getting over that hump of everybody being very protective of what they had. So I remember the first elementary music teacher meeting I had, and I was pointing out some of the great programs I saw over the last year. I said, you know, I really like this kindergarten program. It's perfect. You know, who needs a good kindergarten program? That we can share with, you know, you can share with. And the teacher was very serious and she told me, well, that's my program. That's something I do. And it took a while for us to get over that hump to where like, I know, but now you're going to contribute to this library of things that we have that are great because you are doing a great job. And you know, it just took them this, you know, they felt like they were so protective of their property and their turf. Once they got over that, things started to happen. And now you see this library of programming in the district that's all been shared over the years and bounces from school to school because it's good and it's proven and it's successful and it gets kids fired up. Same thing with even teaching math. You know, we had an opportunity. We used to do these things called learning walks when we first got there, and we would take teachers from other disciplines into other areas. So I may take a math teacher to go watch a science teacher teach. So we were looking not at content anymore. We were looking at teaching practices and engagement with kids. And so it was less threatening because they weren't going into another teacher, a geometry teacher wasn't going into a geometry teacher's room to watch them teach. We were talking about more about the learning practices that are happening in the classroom that they could use in their content area and letting them become an example for other teachers to take into as well. So that started the conversations back then was, you know, we got to have some common learning styles and practices, and it kind of enabled our vision to happen because they were seeing that it wasn't a threatening thing and it wasn't a gotcha thing. You know, we weren't coming in to observe them or to bring people to observe them to write down or mark down their observation or appraisal. It was, we really want to come in and learn what you're doing.
Yeah.
We want everybody to share what they know, you know, with everybody else.
And, you know, man, that whole thing really starts with you guys, you know, in the leadership position, you know, and really walking the walk, because I was in a school where they asked me if I would teach half a day, and then the second half of the day, if I would spend time working with teachers. And so they said, here's what we want to do. We want to set this up so it's just you and teachers. Don't report to us. There's no reports.
Yeah.
You know, I'll take notes, but I'm going to leave them there. I don't walk in with anything. I don't walk out with anything. They're going to give me a piece of paper. I want to write some ideas on some things I think maybe might improve instruction in the classroom. And it was all voluntary. You know, if you voluntary, if you send me an email or drop a note, and I'll swing by your class. And so I had half a day to do this every day, and I had zero out of 200 teachers ask for help. But and what it was all because it wasn't. They're still so suspicious of the leadership team in place.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they really didn't. It was just kind of words and just what they say they were going to do. But really, what they, you know, there were all. There's still the suspicion was still there that it's a gotcha thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we had to kind of get our staff over that the first few years, much like you get kids playing band instruments over playing by themselves. Like the more they do it, the less it's traumatic for them when they have to play by themselves. Mm-hmm. So we had that philosophy going in with the staff. It's like we told them, I said, we're going to come in a lot at the first 6 weeks of school, and we're not there to do any appraisals. We're not there. We're just there to come and watch what's going on. So the more we did it, the more now it's, when we drop in, there's not the teacher trying to then all of a sudden put on a dog and pony show for us.
Showtime.
So we get a better snapshot of how they teach. And so sometimes teachers will tell me, well, I'm giving a test today. And I was like, that's okay. I'm still going to come in. I just want to see what goes on when you give a test. I'm not there again to mark it up. And when we actually have to get to that formal appraisal part, it's not so threatening to the teachers anymore, because we've been there so much and we've had conversations along the way that they don't feel like they feel like we would have already communicated concerns to them along the way. It's not going to be a one-shot deal.
Yeah, and also in addition to that, by the time you get to the formal thing, if you've been in the classroom so many times, by the time you get to the formal thing, if they suck, guess what, man? It's kind of your fault too, because you've been there so many times, and if you haven't given them any feedback at all, that so I find that it's like the teacher's not just taking ownership, but you taking ownership as well of what's going on in the classroom, and that's why they love it, man.
Yeah.
All right, so here's my story from Georgetown. So in Georgetown, we taught on so many different campuses. We did the team taught thing, and we taught the 6th grade school, a couple of junior highs, the high school. We're all over. No one really knows where we are. And when I was there, I was assigned to the high school, even though I was there for the morning meeting, for one band class, and then after school I was there. And then it was the last day of school. One of the assistant principals came in, and he comes up and he says, "Hey, can you help me?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "I'm looking for a guy named," and he looks down and says, "Hal Bowman." I said, "Well, that'd be me." And he goes, "Great. Here, let's sit down here. I'm your observing administrator this year, and I have everything filled out. And if you could just sign them right here and right there and right there." I did 3 of them. And so isn't that great? And so, because how was this guy ever going to find me? Let alone observe anything that was going on. I'm there at 5 a.m. I'm there at 5 p.m. That's about it. You know what I mean? But all right. So you're in the classes regularly, and so when you're coming down the hall, it's not like teachers are sending emails back and forth. Aguillon's in the hall.
Right.
They know.
It's when I have time, and I like to drop in at different times of the classrooms, and we really hit it hard the first 6 weeks of school, and we're in there like a lot. I mean, like we're in there sometimes 3 or 4 times a week in somebody's class, and then it gives us an opportunity to know which teachers are going to need our support more. Mm-hmm. And so I always tell staff, I said, at some point, I'm just not going to be around as much because you're doing a good job. I've seen you work before. I've seen your results with kids. We're going to really be able to hone in on some of our new staff or first year teachers. Mm-hmm. Teachers who need more support. That way we can have more time for conversation. So I think teachers feel really good. Like they know that at a certain point they're not coming around anymore, and they feel like I'm doing a really good job. And by a certain point, every teacher by Christmas, has been seen so much that. We're kind of ready to go into those formal things earlier in the spring because we feel like we got a good handle on it, where everybody's at in their teaching.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man. A couple of things I've seen over the last couple of years I thought were really effective is, and I was part of one of them, is we did a swap program where we took the 9th grade teachers, because they're always complaining about their freshman kids being so ill prepared, and we took them and we gave them 2 days to teach in the 8th grade classrooms, and we took those 8th grade teachers and put them into 9th grade and see who these kids are and what they look like 4 years later with beards and all that. And man, I tell you what, it changed perspectives. It was great. It really helped them understand. And here's the other thing is I started one year is I called it the best practices buffet, and you can steal this and call it your own if you want. Here's what we do. We take a teacher meeting in the school. So we have all teachers meeting come in, and what their job is on one piece of paper, Charles, what we ask them to do is type up something they do great in their classroom. It could be how they pass out a test. It could be how they take attendance. It could be how they greet kids at the door. It could be a lesson that they teach that I can figure out how to somehow figure out that chemistry lesson and apply it to my language arts class. It's called and so they have to make a copy of that one page for every teacher in the school. So if you have 85 teachers, to make 85 copies, and everybody comes into the meeting, and on the long table they stack up their packet, and then as people come as they leave the meeting, everybody takes one of each, and here's your workbook, the best practices buffet, and so they get an idea from a great idea, because everybody's great at something, that they take with them, and at the end of the year they have these 4 books, big binder full of these 4 booklets that they've created that teachers have self-created to add to their library of professional development.
Yeah. Well, they kind of reinforced again, like the whole concept. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the things that we did on our campus to improve instruction were all based on the experience that I had team teaching as a band director.
Mm-hmm.
Because that concept of team teaching is not in the core academic classroom. Yet it's the most powerful way of teaching. We see that in coaching. We see that in successful coaching staffs. We see that in successful band director staffs. And to build that culture in our school, one of the first meetings we had with our leadership team back in when we opened the campus, and we were just kind of getting a feel for what they did. And I had a math department chair who's one of our most brilliant leaders on campus. And she was telling us how they were going to do this tax math camp in the spring. This is what we do for tax math camp, and 4 or 5 days before we do these long sessions and whatever. And I just kind of sat there and was looking. I said, so every kid goes through this tax math camp. She goes, yep. I said, so you try to get all of the tax prep stuff done in those days, like for every kid. She goes, yeah. I said, so do y'all consider that some of those kids don't need that, and that some of these kids need specific things? And she kind of looked at me funny, and I said, so wouldn't it make sense if you knew that these kids need these 5 things to get better, and these kids need these 5 things, that we wouldn't just group those kids together and teach those 5 things in this room? And it just like, she goes, we can do that? I said, yes. I said, you can move kids. I don't care how you move them around the school. Just move them. And so then I started calling them tax sectionals.
I was about to say, brother, you're talking about a clarinet sectional is what you're talking about.
And it was and you know what? Every year it's gotten better. Every year it's gotten better. And they had some really, really nice tax scores this year in math, but they had the last few years because of that concept. And now it's like just part of their culture. Like, some of the volunteers, I can teach, this concept the best. Okay, you're going to teach these 30 kids this period. And the next period you're going to have these kids, and it's just like it's a machine, and they got it going on, and they move kids along so fast. I can't remember what the percentage was, but when you've got 150 kids coming in that didn't pass 8th grade math, and then you whittle it down to like 10 over a year.
Yeah,
that's something to be said, to move those kids up that fast.
Heck yeah, man. And again, I mean, like you said, it's all driven from within their community that they created because they've been given that kind of autonomy to do so.
Yep. I think that's the key, because now, we started out 5 years ago, we would go sit in their meetings to kind of help guide them along. I can't tell you the last time I've actually been to a meeting unless they've invited me to come in for something, because it just goes on, and it's the autonomy, it's setting some certain bar for them, and they know they got to work towards this. And for us, it's also like constant data. As a teacher, as a band director, that was not something that wasn't like regular every minute of the day.
Right.
You're constantly assessing a kid to see how they can get better. So we've given teachers over the years tools to do that they don't feel like they have to wait another week before they get something back. They get it the day they do it. So there's, technologies help that along too, but the more tools we give teachers, the more they feel like they're in charge of the planning. And so, we've got lots of good examples to use on our campus on how that looks.
I'll tell you what, man, when you give some people some power, some autonomy, some tools, some experience, and a model of leadership, they can do some incredible things. Yep. And also, and then you give them the feedback, and then they can analyze it themselves. And like we said, you can't do better till you know better. Now they know better. And what's beautiful about it, brother, is now you have teachers moving into your building and moving into your district that this is just the way it works. This is
Yep.
just what we do, and you plug them into the system.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've seen that because, we started out with that 9th grade core faculty, and now we've got up to 11th grade this year, and they'll add 12th grade next year. But as we've added staff in, they've just kind of acclimated to this is a system. It may take them a couple of weeks to understand that we work as a team and that there's certain things that are non-negotiable. But it's like there are certain things along the way we've said, and we kind of use those two words like these things are non-negotiable. These are the things that need to be done in your class. But the negotiable part always falls back on how they're going to teach it.
Yeah.
How are you going to teach this so that the teacher retains autonomy and they feel like, yes, they're not telling me how to teach it. We are setting an expectation of what we want kids to learn by a certain time. And that really helps us move along through the year, because you've got to get to certain things.
How do you pick people to put in your system, man? This is what I'm wondering because it's such a unique atmosphere, and I've always known it, but the more I get more detail about it, because I'm going to tell you right now, your system and that you have in place there isn't for everybody.
Right.
And because there's a lot of teachers that they don't, I mean, not a lot, I shouldn't say that. And maybe it's not they don't want it, but they just never experienced it. But I know firsthand, I can think of some teachers I've worked with that would never want to be a part of any kind of a thing where we have to meet as a team. And we just give me my kids, let me teach them, and let me send them home. You know what I mean? They really don't want to do this. So how do you figure out who you have sitting in front of you at the interview?
Well, we really spent a lot of time on the personality, kind of trying to dig into their personality more. And we spent a lot of time on the front end talking about what our campus philosophy and expectations are. And then we end that part of the conversation with, and if you don't think that you can do this, we understand and we can part ways right now. But it's that important that we don't start off with, tell us about yourself and those kind of things. We start with, this is how we work on this campus, and this is how we work together, and the expectation is we're all going to be on the same page for certain things, and there's going to be accountability on that side, but we want you to be creative and take chances and be innovative in order to get to that level. And so I really think we've done a good job of hiring because we've set those expectations, and you can get the body language and you can get feedback and other questions that'll tell you whether or not they're really going to buy into it. We spend very little time asking math teachers like, well, how would you teach this quadratic equation?
Right.
We spend very little, it's all about the people,
Listen to you acting like you know about quadratic equations, Charles. Come on.
The only math term I could think of.
And here's what I love about it because I sit in on interviews and with principals and incoming teachers, and it all starts. Well, tell us a little bit about tell us about yourself, and then and that right there creates an environment where this teacher is hoping, they're trying to say something, hoping that this administrator wants to hear. So they're kind of faking it. Yeah. And the administrator is thinking this person might be a great teacher. So I'm gonna portray me and my school in such a way that so now they're gonna pretend they are trying to say what they want this teacher to hear, and we have this whole fake interaction going on. And at the end, what possibly could happen is a great teacher gets hired for a school that they really shouldn't be at, or a great school gets a teacher that shouldn't be there because no one was being authentic in that interview.
Right.
But what you guys do is you set it up and come out with who you are first, and this is who we are, which really would. I mean, if a teacher has some options on where to go, they might cross you off the list like that's not my thing, and that's good for them. It's good for you.
Well, and exactly. I think teachers who come in with that, and they're still out there, that belief of I'm the teacher. And here's the wall, and there's a student. You get that vibe right away.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions we ask are very specific in the way kids and students will interact. Kids and teachers will interact because we want to hear how they've done in the past. Because that's the biggest thing for us is, and we have it. We really try to model mutual respect, and we expect the teachers do that. We have a list of campus rules that we came up with about 4 years ago, and it was kind of controversial at first because we listed teachers as part of those campus rules. And so in the first statement was something like, we believe in mutual respect, and we believe that teachers are responsible to students in these ways, and students are responsible to teachers these ways. And the teachers were like, why are we included in the rules for the school? But I think they understand now. It's like the parents and kids need to understand that this is a two-way street and it's mutual, and that our kids at our age group are young adults, and that we have to treat them that way. So there's I put no disruptive behavior allowed, and that means the staff too. Like staff, you're not allowed to yell at kids.
Yeah.
There's not a reason for you to yell at kids. And that took some understanding. Had to take some understanding from teachers to understand that that was the expectation for the campus as a whole, not just for them, that it was a campus community decision. And so, like, we start off everything with, this is what we believe makes teaching and learning happen on our campus, and it includes those things. And it's very simple. It's very simply stated, and it's posted everywhere, so everybody understands that this is the expectation here. And it's worked really well for us, since we've done that.
I'm thinking that when you guys came in and you had that pre-existing staff that came over with a whole different kind of leadership style, and probably they signed up for the job because of that leadership style, because it fit their
Sure.
teaching style.
Right.
That there's probably some teachers that weeded themselves out that thought, you know what, this place just isn't for me, and I'm going to go find a place that is.
Yeah, there were a few over the years who, decided to go elsewhere. We've never been in a situation where we let anybody go, but we never backed down with what the core values that we had. And the biggest one is just, you've got to do whatever it takes to reach the kids.
Yeah.
It's not a place where you can blame kids or parents. It doesn't matter. You've got to do it anyway. It's got to be done. And if that means you have to do it, then that's what happens. And we had long conversations, and I'm sure you've heard this over and over again, of teachers telling me, that's a parent's responsibility. Parents need to make sure their kids are doing the homework. Mm-hmm. And my response finally was like, the parents aren't getting paid to make sure their kids learn. You are, we are. And, unfortunately, we do have to provide that structure. We have to provide the guidance and mentoring for those kids, because we can't assume they all get it at home. Most of our faculty, I would say, in most schools are from, came from middle-class families where there were values and that, like I told you, our son had a, $50 or $60 project the other night, and that's just, we just did it, and got it done. But there's a lot of kids out there who can't, they don't have that support. And it took teachers a while to really own that information and to own that philosophy that we're going to do, whether they've got that support at home, we're going to make sure they learn, and it's going to look different in our class. And we're going to have to do projects different. We're going to have to do, studying different. And we can only control what we have when we have the kids during the school day. So make the best use of that time,
And probably the number one reoccurring theme on the podcast is this fact that most teachers, the vast majority of teachers, were successful in school.
Right.
They had supportive parents. They might, lots of them had two parents, and both were supportive. And then the expectation was you go to college.
Yeah.
And you know what? They killed it there. They loved that too. And school was fun, and they liked it, and they were successful, and they became a teacher, and they get into the classroom, and when the first kid doesn't get it, it just doesn't make sense in their head why they don't get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What I mean, what is wrong with you? I mean, I just told you. Here, I'll tell you again. And they say it again, and the kid still doesn't get it. And it's hard for a lot of teachers to figure that thing out, man.
My the guy I work with is he's taught a long time, and he's a great principal. He tells this story all the time to the teachers, and it's true. He said his first year teaching biology, he was in a school out in Copper's Cove, and the first test he gave, man, the kids were just like 20, 30, just tanking it. And he just storms into the teacher's lounge, and he's like, I can't believe these kids don't study. They don't know how to take notes. They don't pay attention in class. And I mean, he just kind of went on this rant. And he said this old teacher in the very corner, it's like the long beard, just kind of, he goes, Mr. Denny, you just might have to teach them those things first. And he was just like stunned. Yeah. Well, I don't understand, and just, and it's true. All those things that we complain about, it's like you've got my biggest pet peeve when I first got to being a principal was teachers telling kids and parents, well, this is high school.
Yeah.
This is high school. And I finally just asked everybody one day in a faculty meeting, I said, I want somebody to tell me what that means. What does this is high school mean? Tell me what that means. Because you can't turn a switch on from 8th to 9th grade and the kids are in high school. You have to teach them those skills that we require here.
Yeah.
You have to teach them how to study. You have to teach them how to take notes. You have to teach them how, and it takes, and we're doing a better job of that. Now we're talking about how do you get that to be campus-wide initiatives? Like how do you get that to be Cornell note taking in every class?
Right.
How do you get that to be, this is the homework, this is the evolution of homework? Because kids in middle school right now, in Georgetown anyway, they don't have a whole lot of outside work. So like my son in eighth grade, he has very little homework at all. So when he gets to high school, man, it's going to be a big culture shock for him. So we've talked about how do we transition kids in. So like in the first 3 weeks of school, there might be like 2 outside assignments.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to give at least 2, no more than 2. That way they can kind of just, if they bomb, it's not going to kill them. But you give them that little taste of this is what the expectation is, and you kind of gradually turn up the heat. So that by the time they're juniors, they're starting to understand how to do independent work that they're going to have to do in college, where they're not going to have anybody asking them whether or not they've done their homework.
Right.
So we, trying to build those kind of systems in place, but they've got to be, you got to, it's that next step of buy-in from the staff on what's that going to look like, how do you implement it, and how is it going to benefit the kids over time. But you can't just jump into this is high school and then kids just flounder the first 9 weeks of school, which is what happens. It doesn't happen as much for us anymore because we've addressed that, and we've talked to everybody about these are the things that happen with kids when they're coming into high school. And this is the demographic we have, so you've got to be aware that there's other factors that influence them besides what goes on in your class.
Yeah, and here's the thing, dude. I don't know if you know how rare this conversation is, but I'm trying to think. I really don't know of many schools that are having those conversations on how can we introduce our incoming freshmen to the evolution of homework. And evolution of and to come up with a plan for that, because what the plan is right now, you just slam them with all this work unknowingly, and what we're hoping is a 0 is going to shock the kid into doing his work, but what it does, it makes the kid give up, because the kid looks down, he's got a 39 for an average and says, all right, well, forget it, man. I'm no good. In fact, there's the evidence I'm not smart. There's a 39. Now I have evidence to prove that I'm not smart. Yeah. And they give up, and we lose that. That's insane percentage of the freshman failure rate. It's unbelievable. And just even the fact that you guys are talking about it, man, is such a great thing, and so rare, So here's the deal, man. So you are at the high school, and you have been all right. So you're not going to be there much longer. This is your final year in Georgetown Independent School District. And how many years have you been there total?
17.
17 years.
Yep.
Wow, man, time flies, really.
It does, I know.
And so you've done it all, man. You started out. You went from assistant junior high band director all the way up to you're at the central office, right? Yep. Full time at the fine arts, the big dog, the fine arts big dog, and then you went back to the campus level, and now you're going to be going to Lake Travis. How did they find you? What's the deal there? A job opened up, and what happened?
Well, a job opened up, and it was a unique experience because they've never had a fine arts director before in Lake Travis. And so that kind of enticed me because it was kind of what I did here in Georgetown. I was the first full-time fine arts director in Georgetown. So it's kind of building all those connections between areas that already exist. Art, music, theater, and dance are very successful in Lake Travis now. They were successful here in Georgetown. And to kind of be able to create that fine arts vision for the district was something very exciting for me to kind of throw my hat in the ring for.
And here's a connection for you. When I was in Georgetown, 90, whatever that was, 92, I don't know. One of our student teachers left Georgetown to go be the first band director at Lake Travis.
Oh yeah!
How crazy is that? Full circle, baby. And so now you're going over there to be the director of fine arts. And how did they did they come looking for you, or did you go looking for them?
Well, I applied. I knew some people over there. I had I have some friends I went to college with to teach over there. And they'd asked me if I would be interested in coming, and they knew I was already doing campus administration stuff, but I still kind of had my hand in the art stuff. Applied, went through the whole couple interviews, and came out as their guy. So very excited about being there.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of experience of coming in as a new guy in different organizations and taking over organizations you're already in. And so, as you know, you can't just slap on the change immediately. Yep. But what would you say some things that you want to start moving in a new direction, or some things that aren't in place maybe you want to bring in place?
Well, I think they're kind of similar to the things that we put in place here in Georgetown, and it's district level events. We have We have an elementary honor choir now that all the kids from all the elementary schools have a chance to do, and it's kind of like an all-region thing where they come in for one day with a clinician, they do a concert. Every other year they go perform at the state capitol for Arts Education Day. We have an elementary art show, and we have a secondary art show that in different places around the city. Things like that that need to really begin showcasing the talents of kids beyond the school. How do you get those things in the community, and then to start participating more in statewide type of events. So I'm really looking for those gaps of things that aren't existing right now, to begin having those conversations with staff to get them to help design those, and to provide them the support and infrastructure to make them really successful. The Lake Travis programs perform really well at state levels already,
Yeah, they do.
and in everything that they do. And so bringing fine arts to that level, but as a fine arts vision, not just as a separate band or orchestra or choir. All those things are successful, but now it's time for the vision to be like a fine arts department vision, to where when people think about Lake Travis, they're going to think about fine arts programs.
Yeah. I love it, man. So here's the deal, dude. You went to Georgetown and you didn't die.
I didn't die, and I told you I was going to tell you a story about Lake Travis, and I won't say what conversations happened, but it was a very similar conversation. And when I heard about it, like this weight came off of me, because I was really torn. Like, do I leave Georgetown? When I figured out I was going to be a real contender for this job, I really started to have some second thoughts. I was like, I've been here for 17 years. The people here have treated me well. I have a great time with my staff. There was no reason for me to leave. My parents live across the street from us. I mean, it's a great situation. There was a conversation that happened I think behind closed doors about me leaving, and in that room, someone said almost verbatim what they said. If he goes over there, he's not going to be able to handle that job, and it's gonna. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, this is meant to be. This is it.
That was a sign from God.
Deja vu. It's deja vu. I said, I'm good. I'm good to go.
There you go. I'm in. I'll take it. It worked out so far, man. He didn't die, and man, you're prospering pretty well, and you got a beautiful house up there in Spicewood that you're going to move into, and move the fam up there, and new school next year for the kids, the whole thing, brother. Hey, listen, before we terminate the thing, let me talk to you about let's recap. You've admitted your addiction with Disney, and but man, it's even more than that, because that place offers some amazing opportunities for students and student groups to visit. And talk to me about what you do to help student groups go to Disney and experience all that they have to offer.
Well, I offer personal student tours to Disney parks in California and Florida. We do that for for bands, orchestra, choirs, little league teams, whatever you want. We organize the whole trip for our clients, and our difference is I wouldn't say we're a student tour company. We actually treat every student tour like if they were our own vacation client. So at that level of planning and the level of services that we give, like if you were paying us as an individual client, we give that to every student on the trip. And so there's a lot of extras we give and provide, and itinerary planning and special perks and different things that we try to give to our student groups. And then we always have people on site that are there to make sure that everything that you're doing goes smoothly. So they stay at the hotel with you, they travel to the parks with you, they're on call 24/7, and we only use educators as part of our tour company. So so that we've got experience working with kids, we've got experience working with parents, and you have administrators on there. We do all that, and we do all the planning for you. So it's a good deal, and we've had very good success with it.
Yeah, man. And so now, of course, this is outside of your role in public school. You have this thing on the side, and just to be clear, because I was a band director, and dude, I couldn't even plan a trip to Schlitterbahn. So I can't even imagine trying to plan a trip to Disney with so many options. I mean, just the travel and the stay, and how do you feed? I got 200 kids. How am I going to feed them? And so what you do is it's like this turnkey operation where they just say, people tell you kind of what their idea is. You give them back in detail. Well, here's how this thing's going to look for you. Here's what it's going to cost. It's like one big flat fee, and you take care of every single detail for them from the time they leave the school to get to however, whether it's bus or airplane, however they get there, till the time they get back home.
Yep, do all that for them. And like I said, I think our biggest strength is that everybody who we travel with, as far as our staff, have been to Disney parks multiple times, and so they know all the ins and outs and all the, the best way to get here and the best time to be here. So we get to advise our clients on all those things to make sure that their trip's smooth. And we're not just, picking up a schedule for them. We're actually, we've lived the schedule before. We've been there when they've been there. We've taken groups ourselves. And being educators is a big piece of that, that we know how to plan trips to where it's going to maximize the amount of fun for kids, and it's also going to lessen the amount of stress for the teachers.
And here's what I love about it is not just the fact that, I mean, you guys, it's not like you have hundreds of groups you're taking. You guys are working with a handful of groups a year and giving that personal attention and service, and which is exactly what they need when they're doing this mammoth trip of a lifetime. Because you know what, bro, the first thing we talked about is your memory of going to Disney when you were in high school. You still remember it.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't take any more than 10 groups a year. For that reason, like you said, we don't want it to be to where it just becomes like a factory. We make it a point to go and meet with the parents before we take off for the trip, and that way that they know who we are when we're on the trip with them. But yeah, we're real selective about that. We're not going to exceed 10 groups a year just for that reason.
Yeah, awesome, brother. Hey, listen, man, I think this might be my favorite one ever. I had a good time. We're talking about some heavy stuff, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, we got a lot of stories to share that we can't do on air.
I know, man. So, listen, but hey, listen. I felt like you sounded smart. I felt like I sounded smart. People might think we're actually smart. I don't know.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm coming. I'm going to be around, man. I'm all over the state. I do my thing, my Teaching a Rockstar thing all summer long, and I am making a couple of trips through Austin.
Excellent.
And so maybe I'll swing by and check out the new homestead and check out Lake Travis. Beautiful area, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. But anyway, I appreciate being on, and I'll be out sitting in the audience at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, you will. Awesome. All right, brother. Say hi to Mama and the boys for me.
All right, same to you. Take it easy.
Later, brother.
Bye-bye.